Welcome to the virtual events session. Thanks for joining us. I am Caleb Parker, your moderator today, and that's at Caleb _ Parker on Twitter. I am excited to talk about this topic because everyone is in this lockdown time frame these past few months, and in our industry, that's been a big challenge. So today we're going to talk to some very experienced panelists in virtual events, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So Renaud, please introduce yourself.
Everyone, my name is Visage. I'm the co-founder of Eventbrite. We're probably the largest event ticketing company in terms of number of ticket sales today. We started at the end of 2005, have been going on for a while, and we publicly listed the company a couple of years ago. Of course, very excited to talk about the future of online events, but also the future of live events, which we think will return in a big way once the lockdowns get relaxed.
Well, I think we all hope that indeed. Damien, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Damien Courbon. I'm one of the co-founders of Swapcard, which is currently the platform you are using to attend this event. And for the context, before March 2020, we were working only with live events, and of course we had to adapt and now can support both live and virtual events.
Excellent pivot. How about Ruben?
Hi, my name is Ruben Onderdelinden. I am one of the founders of Lively, and we are the first event technology company in Benelux. So we are not a technology developer, we are really a service company that helps organizers to select, implement and integrate the right event software and apps. And of course, we also face the challenge to help our clients pivoting to hybrid and virtual, and we are very focused on also the online business models that become very important now.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least, Robyn.
Thanks. I'm Robyn McGirl. I'm the head of product here at HireSpace. So in my role, I'm looking at ways to make event booking and delivery a joy through transformational technology, either via our HireSpace professional platform or hirespace.com.
Excellent. I'll kick off with a couple of questions, but certainly, please, if you're watching, submit your questions, and we're happy to have this become an interactive discussion. So I'll start with, Robyn, I'll throw this to you first, but certainly anybody wants to jump in. My first question is, what trends have you seen over the last few months now in virtual events?
Definitely the volume of virtual events has definitely increased quite significantly. I think people who wouldn't necessarily kind of dabble in the space are obviously looking at ways that they can still engage and interact with their audience. So just sheer volume has definitely increased. I think the scope of virtual events has also opened people's eyes to like international opportunities. So you're not restricted by geography as much. But also there's been a real like education piece for the market. So a lot of event organizers haven't run necessarily virtual events before, and there's been a little bit of a lag in terms of knowledge of like tech solutions, but also just kind of how to successfully run a virtual event. So there's definitely been a trend with kind of the education piece as well.
Ruben, I know you were talking a little bit while we were in the queue about this. Can you chime in on this question?
Yeah, we see that our clients, and those are mostly conference and trade show organizers, really struggle with the high offer of online events right now. So where they first could ask 300 euros for tickets, that's nearly impossible because a lot of companies offering their content for free. So what we see is that more events are getting more sponsor driven, let's say, because that's more easy way to generate revenue. Online lead generation is far more easy to create value than try to differentiate with online content. It's very hard. So that's a big trend that we have seen.
I have a few friends in the events industry who are event companies, and they're struggling to convert the exhibition sponsor revenue from a live event into a virtual event. What would you add to that? How could you advise those folks?
Yeah, so if you were used to sell square meters and that's not possible anymore, that's of course a very big change. I think you cannot talk anymore about exhibitors. I think it's, and also maybe not about sponsors. It's more getting partnerships where the companies really get involved in the content as well. So, and I think that's also where the most value is for these companies, that they can really show some thought leadership, let's say, in a certain roundtable session or a very focused webinar where they can share their knowledge. And of course, they need to have a good profile in this environment, let's say this event platforms where you host these kind of events, where they should be able to also easily, schedule meetings, but also have insight in which visitors are interested in their company. And there's some certain platforms to make that visible even before a visitor reaches out to a partner or a sponsor. And that's that way you give them really some control that they were looking for before, I think, even the crisis on generating leads. So yeah, really putting them in control in lead generation and giving them a quality audience in interactive sessions. That's, I think, important.
Damien, it sounds like it looks like you want to say something.
No, but yeah, I fully agree with Ruben. And what I want to say is that this trend, it's not completely new. It's just accelerating now, and it doesn't apply only to virtual events. If you think of live events, like specifically trade shows, the fact of selling only square meters is a traditional business model that is currently evolving. You need to sell services, and as said, Ruben, you have to adapt to the new trends, like sales based on the results on the lead generated. And so that's true for virtual events, but that's also true for hybrid and live events.
And Renaud, I wanted to ask you as well on this same question with the trends you're seeing over at Eventbrite.
Because of our size and the variety of event creators that we have on the platform, we have a lot of data. So online events, of course, have shot up over the last couple of months. In April, for example, we saw 2,000% increase in the number of online events. We processed about 8 million free and paid tickets just for online events in April. So a huge amount of attendees going online. I mean, maybe not out of choice, but definitely a pickup there. Maybe surprisingly, it's not business and professional events that are leading. It's health and wellness. They did a massive switch to online from a very low base before that. So we have 4,000%, I think, increase in April. We're also seeing a lot of creativity. I mean, our organizers have to pretty much reinvent their businesses overnight. So they're coming up with a variety of different models, like time fuel concerts, for example, where they organize listening parties that are curated by super fans. We've had very large event creators in physical types of events move online, like Daybreaker, for example. It's a morning dance community that has 17,000 members across 30 countries, and they've launched their global events once a week, and they managed to attract 2,000 people on a Zoom call, which is quite an interesting challenge to manage and produce. We've had like physical venues like Piano Fight going virtual and organizing all their shows for free with a virtual tip jar, for example. And then some other like more merchandise-driven type of approach, like Renegade Craft Fair, for example, where they moved their in-person events before they had live streams. Now they have purely virtual events, and the attendees can purchase goods or purchase goodie bags as part of their tickets. So a lot of creativity, I think, especially on the monetization side. They need to generate revenue still in this complex situation we're in. So excited for the future, and I think we'll see what sticks after COVID becomes less of a concern.
And when you talk about the the paid and free events, do you have the data in front of you, or are you able to talk about the percentage of are there more free events now, or are people transitioning to paid events online more?
Well, I think monetization and how much to charge and what can be free versus paid is still being ironed out by organizers as they change the formats, test the waters with the appetite on the other side. So we've seen for sure a lot of free events first. I think the mix is being slightly changed over the last few weeks, but we're tracking that week to week, basically. As the quality of the online experience increases, I think there will be a lot of freedom in setting the right prices for the experience. So that's kind of a chicken and egg problem where you need appetite for attendees to attend these online events and getting them maybe habituated to contribute to the online event space, which was pretty much free for everyone before that.
So I'm going to sort of move the conversation forward a little bit in picking up on some of these trends that we're seeing. What sort of opportunities do you believe this presents for event organizers? And I'm going to throw it out to whoever wants to start first.
Okay, I can start. So first, what we see, I think, let's say in the upcoming years, is a big increase of hybrid events. We've run ourselves an online event last month, Evolve, gathering a lot of events organizers, and 73% of them told us their plans are to move hybrid. And I think that's great because it answers perfectly the willingness of people to go back to in-person events, but also to face the health restriction, to prevent some risks, or to be more inclusive. So you can attract attendees that were not able or willing to travel to your events. And so the opportunities it creates, in my opinion, there are various ones, but I think with the increase of innovation adoption in the platforms, we'll see more and more opportunities to engage your opportunity, not only during the event, but through the whole year. And also I'm talking a lot about B2B events, but because we work with B2B events, but specifically for trade shows moving towards the kind of marketplace model. So these trends were also already existing before, but I think the current change in the markets are accelerating them.
Yeah.
Excellent.
If I may add something. So, I mean, we're fairly convinced that live in-person events will come back in a big way. But there has been adoption, I think, of the online event format. It's not all it can be. I think we'll see opportunities in creating and crafting attendee experiences that are maybe more interactive, that brings back some of the serendipity that we are used to seeing in physical events. So there will be, I think, no matter what, a new set of tools that allow the hybrid events to be much more easily organized and to be much more interactive and engaging for audiences. So hopefully the tech industry will come up with great solutions. I think we're seeing a few startups emerge, for example, that create like VR environments that could be combined with a physical location to make you feel like you're really part of the experience, even though you're not physically present. And we have a bunch of companies we're talking to see how they're thinking about the future. What does the hybrid experience looks like? And how do we package that, or how do we create the right tools and the right connections between all the platforms, like between our ticketing platform, for example, and all the different providers out there to make it as simple as possible for event organizers to create these experiences. Because I think today that's the main hurdle. Like, these tools are all separate. They don't share data. They require you to sign up with 5 different companies to create one experience. So it's very complicated and a big hurdle for a lot of organizers to move to online now, but hybrid in the future.
I want to pick up on the hybrid topic, and you mentioned VR. There's a question actually from Bella Peters that came in that I want to bring in. So she's asking if the virtual reality events are a possibility in these as we go digital and virtual, and are they financially feasible? So what have you seen so far?
I've personally seen and been part in some of the VR experiences that a couple of startups are developing. It's still very early days. You have to recreate that physicality. I think that comes a lot from sound, like how you manage sound across the virtual environment, so that if you're at a table, for example, you only hear what's going on at your table, and then when you pick you up and go to a different table, then you join a different conversation. So it's really about like harnessing technology to try to recreate as much as possible the intimacy you want, or the broad audience type of feeling that you might want at a different moment. And I think we'll see a lot of iteration over that model to create a satisfying experience for the attendee, because you can't be just lost in a big space and not know what to do and hear 1,000 voices at the same time. So how do you create that physicality inside a virtual space? It's going to be a very interesting development, I think.
I think it's also very interesting to combine platforms like Swapcard with a 3D event location. So you really, prepare.
Can you give an example of that?
Platform who's offering something. So like Vertways is, for example, the solution who really developed some nice 3D environments where you can walk through, and you really choose like an avatar, a person yourself. And then you can walk through the event with different spaces. And then when you come close to a certain person, you can start talking. But when you have a big event, you don't want to be a lost person in the digital world. At the normal event location, it's fine walking around. But when you're in the digital environment, that's maybe fun for a few minutes. But so the combining how you can prepare your event by using tools like Swapcard, scheduling your sessions, your meetings, etc. But then on the end, when you have a meeting booked in the networking area, you really go to the 3D networking area and you meet someone there, and that gives a completely different dimension of online events. I think I've tried it myself, and it gives an exciting feeling walking through a 3D environment, meeting other people in the same industry, where you can have a chat. When you are a speaker, you walk on the stage and you're able to talk to all people in the room because you're on the stage, for example. It gives a new level, I think, which is very interesting, but not on itself. You still need the networking tools, the event platforms to make that time efficient. And it also should be a short time frame, just like a normal event. Should create some urgency to be there.
I have a question on this, because we have another question that came in from Sarah Jane asking about with the VR experiences, how do you manage the distribution and sanitation of headsets and controllers during the pandemic? But my question piggybacked on that is, when we talk virtual reality right now, are we talking about hybrid events, and are there going to be handsets and controllers? Or are we talking about people sitting at home and managing it from where they're sitting?
So I think hybrid is not only having online audience and physical audience at the same time. I think hybrid is as well. Your event is not only one day anymore. No, it's starting 3-4 months before that, and you have different event moments before you go to the actual physical event, which on the end makes that physical event very productive, because you have people online already. You have seen presentations, and then it's much more worth flying to another place in the world, being there physical. So I think hybrid is also that, having a longer time frame of your event.
Maybe interesting. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I think the experiences I've seen didn't require a headset, for example. So it was more a virtual world that you could experience through your mobile phone, for example. I don't believe expecting everyone to have a VR headset, to be a requirement for an event will be very successful. So it needs to be cross-platform for sure. You can consume it wherever you are. It needs to be real time, so that you have the right connection at the right time, just like in a physical location. And to be accessible as much as possible.
Yeah, you need to download an app.
We've been working with an event using a virtual world and combining with Swapcard, and that's indeed very nice for the experience and that's the entertainment. We've seen some challenges in terms of networking and meeting, because currently, especially in B2B events, you have the need of, create a trust relation, and video calls will always be better than a discussion with avatars. For now, it can change, but it's what we've seen. And I think talking about hybrid event, another big challenge we'll face is how you create a global community. Like, you don't want to have two communities, one online and one being on site. You want all of them to be able to interact. So that's a very interesting challenge also to face.
Yeah. Very good. What was it, Ruben? What was that app you were talking about?
Virt Ways. VIRT.
Okay.
Ways.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm gonna just, Robyn, I want to go back to you for a moment, because we've been talking a little bit about innovation and VR. What do you expect to see with the hybrid events that we're going to come out of this pandemic? And do you think we're going to see an explosion of hybrid events? Is there going to be a reduction of live events and more virtual? What do you expect?
I don't think live events will ever disappear. I think there's definitely going to be this bridge where as we kind of move out of this pandemic, that hybrid is going to play a huge part. There will be this lag in terms of people feeling comfortable or ability to kind of travel to in-person events. I think the experience for hybrid needs to massively improve. Like, I've attended hybrid events and dialed in, and the experience isn't great. So if they really want to blend the two worlds, then production, quality of content, engagement needs to really, really improve. But there's just huge opportunity. Like, if you can nail hybrid, then you can, triple, quadruple the size of your events and your reach. But there needs to be a really cohesive approach to how you tackle that.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna just bring up the elephant in the room for a moment, and it sounds great, but budgets, right? So if we talk about having a live event, but then adding in the virtual component, that's more cost. How do companies manage that, or is it really more cost?
I think looking at kind of the ROI from like on a individual delegate level, like if you're actually reaching a bigger audience, there is huge scope to, I think, to get greater ROI. Budget is obviously a concern, and I think we will start to see some more kind of out-of-the-box hybrid solutions for people whose budget might not be able to have like bespoke production setup each time. But that will obviously take a little bit of time to get there. I think like give it 6 to 12 months, then there will be solutions that kind of fit every budget.
Yeah. I think also being smart with what do you want to offer on demand and what do you want to offer live in terms of sessions. So when you book a venue for your event and there's only 200 people, it's too costly if you want to stream that 30 sessions that you normally stream. So what you could consider is that in the morning times you record a lot of breakout sessions or partner sessions. And then starting in the afternoon, you will have the opening and keynotes, and then you publish all the sessions that you have recorded in the morning, where you also have more control on the experience for the people that watch, and you have lower cost in terms of venue and technical stuff.
This is kind of in line with this question here, but what have you seen? The feedback from delegates and people who are attending virtual events, what sort of experiences are getting the best feedback? Maybe Damien, we'll start with you on this one.
It's not really the feedback, but looking at the data, we see big challenges. We've seen that the attendance time, like the time spent on a virtual event, is much lower than an on-site, like a physical event. And also the networking is much lower, like the number of meaningful encounters and also serendipity nothing compare. So I think these two big challenges are what we should focus on as a platform. And on that, it's not really about adding fancy features. It's really to work a lot on the user experience. I think this will be the most important part to improve. But apart from that, I think the feedback is good. If you talk to attendees, they were maybe a bit doubtful, but actually they enjoy online events. And so that's why we'll see, I think, an increasing numbers of hybrid events, because of course, a lot will want to come back to physical events, but we'll see like a mix of some people preferring online. I think that will stay like this for quite some time.
Okay. And are there any specific services that event organizers can be thinking about to providing their virtual delegates?
Like services you can only offer to a virtual event compared to a physical one?
Perhaps, or maybe maybe not necessarily what you don't provide at a live event, but what you do provide at a live event that you can also provide in a virtual environment.
It's not exactly something new, but we know that if you want your event to be successful, you need to make sure like attendees feel that they belong to your event, to your community. And this is the same for all types of events. And so it's, I would say, more complicated when you do that for a virtual event. So you should really try to be creative. There is plenty of ways to try that, but you should be really trying to create a strong relation with your attendees because it's not exactly the same. So I don't think the perfect solution or framework is currently existing. Like events are currently reinventing themselves and trying things, and we'll learn a lot in the next few months.
So the majority of the people watching today, according to a poll that we did, they're in the stage of sort of researching and learning. And so what would you tell someone that's thinking about starting their first virtual event? What do they need to do first to set the foundation for success?
So it depends the types of events, but yes, they have to completely reinvent themselves, change their business model. One thing we work with many events going from physical to virtual. And one thing very important, don't underestimate the production side. It has so much impact on the attendee experience. And some organizers tend to forget a bit about this, or to at least underestimate it. And another important tip is, don't think of your platform like, okay, this is a big budget, like a big expense. Try to think more of how these new tools and platforms can help me increasing my revenues. This is the way you should think, because of course, if not, it will be too difficult for you to match your budget if you only think it as an expense.
Ruben, did you have something to add?
Yeah, also I think a big mistake that some organizers make is when they have sponsors at their event, is that they offer the same networking capabilities to visitors as sponsors. So you should really be, it should really be possible that you can limit the networking capabilities per group in your event. Otherwise, sponsors will say, why would I pay a few thousand euros, but I can also schedule meetings for, buying a ticket or even going free. So really make sure that you give all types of attendees the right access, the right rights to your event. Otherwise, you will cannibalize your business model quite quickly. Yeah.
And Renaud, I think you had something as well.
Yeah, it's a changing time for sure. So I would encourage every event organizers out there to iterate over solutions. So if you think of different formats, test them out with attendees, see what the engagement is. Make sure you can market these events efficiently so that you can have the broader audience as possible. I think digital marketing becomes a lot more important. For example, when you organize online events, you have a much broader reach, which is great, but you also have to have the right talent in-house or find the right partner to help you navigate how to attract a global audience and surface your events out of the hundreds of thousands of online events that are happening every day. So this requires, I think, different skills. The production value, of course, has to be there. The experience has to be enjoyable. So, and keeping in mind that not all tools will apply to the size of the event. So larger events will require different platforms than the smaller Zoom-like webinar style events. And I think every category of every vertical will have different solutions available to them. Like if you're in the health and wellness, maybe you should use different tools than in the professional space, because we're seeing a lot of the tools being very category centric, building networking feature, for example, that might be relevant for the professional world, but not so much for the consumer world. So I think what we'll see is that the emergence of platforms that are very flexible in the type of experience that they're allowed to create, so that you can run a business event, but you can also run a yoga class or a music live stream, or et cetera, because at the end of the day, it's bundling a bunch of tools into one experience. And as connected as the tools are, I think the secret will be making that combination as simple and straightforward as possible.
So we have a few more questions that's come in from the online viewers. So I'm going to turn to some of these questions as well. So Karen asked, do you have any advice on what else should be included in the overall budget for a purely virtual event, in addition to the platform itself?
I think maybe considering kind of marketing collateral or any kind of on the day kind of content that needs to be produced. Again,
social media maybe.
Yeah, whether that's coming from your in-house team or whether you need to outsource it. I think with virtual events being so noisy at the moment, with so many kind of so many happening, like you really need to focus on aesthetic. That it doesn't need to be expensive, but I think the brand you're presenting needs to be considered.
Good advice. Good advice. Okay, so this is a really good question, I think. We're all virtual. You're all virtual. I'm a novice. I'm learning, but you're all virtual event experts. Are virtual events right for all companies and all types of events, or are there certain examples that maybe don't work online?
Yeah, I think there are a lot. Like anytime, I think the larger events will have a hard time creating a compelling experience that compares to the live. I mean, sports is a good example. Like sports is physical, it's live. It's really hard to recreate something that where you can correct someone's posture, for example, or do the one-on-one type of interaction you have at a class in a physical studio. Larger conferences where you have a lot of discovery just by looking, like how do you recreate the virtual equivalent or leverage online technologies to create a different experience. I think we haven't seen that much innovation beyond the webinar format in the online event space at the moment. So that applies to a subset of events, not all.
Okay. Anyone else want to add before I move to the next question?
Yeah,
okay.
I think workshops are also quite difficult in a lot of times to get, really people being active, doing stuff online. It's really hard, I think, to get the same energy, the same stimulation.
Workshops. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not impossible. It's just more challenging, I would say. Yeah. So it's just a matter of time, but not of if it's not impossible.
Or not. That's true. Yeah.
So this is sort of, this question from Stephanie kind of ties into one of my final questions I want to leave you with. But her question is, what elements can you add to a virtual event to make them really stand out? And I'm going to throw that question out, but I want to add to this, and you guys decide how you want to answer it. But I want each person to answer this in a quick, efficient, like 2-line answer or something, because we are getting short on time. But is there one tip for planners to make their virtual event stand out from the crowd? So maybe answer that how you want to. What elements can you add to a virtual event to make them stand out? And is there one tip? So I think that maybe that's even the same question. So let's start with Robyn, and we'll go back, Robyn, Ruben, Damien, and then Renaud will wrap it up.
I think you've got to keep it really simple and focus on the content. The quality of the content is the most important thing. You can't fall back on, particularly purely virtual events, on having a cool venue or amazing food or anything like that. So if your content's not good enough, then people will switch off. So that should always be the first thing that's considered.
Excellent. Ruben?
I think it's also the right mix of looking at a discussion, learning something, being involved in a round table session where you should not ask people to watch longer than 20 minutes to a certain presentation. If you always try to mix after something like that, even 20-minute presentation is very hard. You have to be a really good speaker if you want to keep people engaged online. So really a mix of involving people. It's very important.
Thank you. Damien?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Involving your attendees, it's really important. We've seen some nice stuff but roundtables or one-on-one Q&As or meeting with speakers just after a talk. It's really good. You don't want them to be too passive. So yeah.
Okay, and Renaud?
Well, being very clear about expectations, how you engage with these virtual events. Too many creators out there are just throwing you a Zoom link at 10 minutes before and they don't tell you anything, and then you get frustrated because you can't even get there. After that, production value, use props, all the virtual backgrounds, make it branded. I think Hyperspace done a great job for this event in particular to show transitions, to make it look very professional. And I think finally trying to make it as varied as possible in the format. Too much repetition, I think, hurts the experience. And I think that's what maybe people lose patience after a while because it's too much of the same. So how can you spice it up with different type of interactions, different content, different formats?
Thank you for that. Well, I'm like you. I'm very optimistic about the future, and as lockdown relaxes across the world, and we come out of this pandemic, live events will be back, and we'll be back in business. But one thing's for sure: virtual events have made their mark, and I think they will stay, and we'll see a lot more hybrid. So, thank you very much to all the panelists for all of your insights. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good rest of your day.